A very warm welcome to Kenya Explained here on New Day TV. I am your host, Esther Nyonje. On this 27th day of September 2023, exactly at 19:37 hours from wherever you're joining us from, Karibu Sana. Here we discuss issues that are necessarily important to you. I mean, when the dollar is 160 shillings, when the Kenyan shilling is 160 shillings against the dollar, it's a concern to you. Now you need to realize if you need to still continue staying in this country or move to another country, But let us not start this show on that undefeated attitude. We are here to spread the gospel of positivity only. Let's see. Let's tune in, share this broadcast, send in your questions, your comments. I see Joseph Manyanga already says, Josephat Manyanga already says, waiting, and here we are. Tune to this broadcast, send in your questions and concerns to make this session as lively as possible, because I cannot talk here alone. And welcome, but I'm not alone. I am with two amazing guests, and we are delving into cross-cutting issues in our country today. And to introduce them, we have, on my right, I have Mr. Nathaniel Mong'are. Habari yako?
Safi sana, Esther. Thank you for hosting me.
Karibu sana.
Yeah.
Nathaniel Mong'are is the director. I'm going to introduce you mwenyewe.
Yeah, you can still go ahead.
I know kidogo. I know speaker wa KYPA.
But I'm the director of ICT and programs at Amani National Congress Party. And that's what I do on a daily basis.
Kazi ni kazi.
Kazi ni kazi.
Karibu sana.
Yes.
And on my left, I have amesema ni Power So Oyugi Dickson Maungu. He's the member of parliament of Luanda constituency, where I happen to come from. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much. It is a privilege to be here.
Thank you so much for coming.
Asante.
Karibu sana. Now, ladies and gentlemen, tune into this discussion. Share this live broadcast to as many people as possible. Send in your questions, your comments, and your concerns. Let us have this interactive session. And from wherever you're seated from, I know you have heard of the National Dialogue Committee, the NADCO, that is being chaired by Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka and the majority party leader, Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah. Now, this NADCO came up because it was trying to fix the problems we've had time and time again after every election year. Now, to start with the parliamentarian, the one who sits at Bunge, do you believe that this NADCO committee is finally the solution that we have been waiting for? It will be the remedy that we have been waiting for all these years?
Well, thank you. Maybe it will be first of all important to know why did it come to be. Mm-hmm. You remember after the last general elections, we had a lot of contestations around the elections of 2022. And that's so a situation where people went to the streets demonstrating on a number of variables that they wanted addressed. And, I come from the Azimio wing of Parliament. Mm-hmm. And as Azimio, we had issues that we felt needed to be articulated and put before the Kenyans so that they can be able to guide us. One of that issue was because of the elections that were. We had a belief, and we still have that belief, that the elections had been tampered with. And we felt that we wanted to know what happened within the server, because it's just important to put the logs and to tell us what happened. This is how the votes were streaming, and the count matches what was announced. From where I sit, we are deeply convicted that things did not go right because somebody somewhere interfered, or do I say camagonized the servers. Two, there's a rising cost of living. As you are aware, when His Excellency the President took over the reins of power, things just happened. Right now, you just said that a dollar is going at 160 shillings. Mm. The cost of fuel is at more than 216 shillings. Mm-hmm. Talk about electricity, the cost of sugar, the cost of living generally is high. There may be global dynamics, but as much as we have the global dynamics, we also have Kenyan issues. For example, the recent passing of the finance bill in Parliament, which also a big drama in Parliament, saw to it that VAT was to be increased from 8% to 16%. It is a factor that has contributed to
the rising cost of living. Mm-hmm.
Fuel, just like any, fuel is a great component in any form of production. So you find the cost of products, everything has gone high. The cost of electricity has gone high. And therefore, that's a matter that we felt wanted to be included. Three, was the issue of inclusivity. You know, when a leader of the person of the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya goes into a podium and says that Kenya is like a company where people own shares.
Kumsamea.
We cannot, you know, unless he retracts, because already it's in the public hazard. That is what he said. So when you talk about the country being a company that is governed by shares, and I wonder, I pay a lot of money in terms of taxes. Then where do I stand? I believe you equally pay a lot of money.
A lot.
The hustler down there, whenever he or she buys sugar in Luanda or pays for boda boda, he pays his taxes. And therefore, comes somebody of the caliber of the Deputy President saying that one, it was reckless and out of order. And therefore, we felt that we needed to have inclusivity. A good example, it was in Parliament today where the Committee for National Integration was looking at a matter. The recent recruitment that we had in KRA. It is sad to say that out of 1,000 people that were employed, 765 of them came from two major communities in this country. And we ask ourselves, where, in fact, there was a question to the Minister for National Treasury about a young man from Turkana who had applied, but somehow was knocked out. So we were talking about inclusivity, and we still feel it is important. My brother, coming from Kisii, I believe would also have wanted to see somebody from his village being part of that. But believe you me, as it stands, 78%, 76% of those people came from two regions. And we all are Kenyans paying taxes, and therefore the issue of shareholding and whatever is a consequence of this. And therefore, that is where we are beginning. Yeah.
Now, Mong'are, we've had previous reports and recommendations. We've had the Waki report, we've had the Kriegler reports in the past. Do you believe that this is the remedy to fix the country?
First of all, Esther, thank you for having me, and kudos to Mheshimiwa Yugi. First of all, the National Dialogue Committee is a total waste of time and a total waste of taxpayers' money. We've seen the reports that they are going to gobble up to 100 million Kenyan shillings just in form of sitting allowances. I have never seen any form of insensitivity in the history of Kenya than this time, when we have already a matter that has been settled, and I beg to differ with Mheshimiwa. The matter of the election was settled by the voters, the ballot. The voters unanimously expressed their voice that the Kenya Kwanza government has the majority. And if you want to know who won the elections, look at the parliament, the representation of parliament, where Mheshimiwa sits in. Parliament, Kenya Kwanza has the majority of the voters.
Wongo.
We have the majority coalition from Kenya Kwanza. Numbers speak for themselves.
You can say it.
He is a lawmaker, and lawyers say in Latin, res ipsa loquitur. Facts speak for themselves. You can never substantiate facts. So it's a matter of fact that Kenya Kwanza is the majority coalition in parliament, where my party sits. We were the principal founders of that coalition. Even in fact, after the post-election, after the elections in August last year, the Political Parties Act allows for the formation of pre- and post-election coalition arrangements. So this is the case, and Kenya Kwanza is the majority. So that matter is settled. Far beyond that, the judiciary system of Kenya validated the elections. He is trying to blind us to the fact that the Supreme Court of Kenya settled that question whether the election was regular or irregular. The Supreme Court unanimously, with all the 7 justices, said in all the questions that were raised before a competent forum that the president and the Kenya Kwanza administration was elected validly. So I think it is a waste of taxpayers' time to revisit the issues of elections when the constitution itself that put Mheshimiwa in parliament already settled that matter. In fact, the constitution allows that if somebody is not satisfied with the elections, for instance, if somebody could have contested his election as a member of parliament, that person goes to a high court. They adjudicate the case. And if Mheshimiwa is cleared, I don't know whether he had a case, if Mheshimiwa is cleared by the courts, his win is validated. It is the same with our Supreme Court. Our Supreme Court is a court of sui generis. It is the court of final decision. So secondly, I don't agree with the issues that are being adjudicated there within the National Dialogue Committee. Most of those issues can be addressed competently within the platform of Parliament. For example, if it is the question of the cost of living, Parliament is the right forum to address these questions. Is Mheshimiwa telling us that he's incapacitated to address the question of the cost of living in Parliament.
Parliament itself passed VAT from 8 to 16%.
Yes, and Parliament is a
increasing
political
the cost of living.
It did pass.
Yes.
You know, it's important, if I may interject,
Yeah.
you know, it's important, you know, it is important that we're on a platform that is national and global. It is good if facts are put right. The current regime has majority which it has raided. Let me use the word raiding. My good brother here, and I appreciate he's a young man like me, when elections were done, indeed, Azimio had majority.
The majority in Parliament, and that is a
now,
fact.
the first raid was they had to use money and other form of tricks to bring in Upia from the North Corridor, the northern eastern area, and all those guys went into government. Then came Jubilee. Out of 27 members, 25 of them were gobbled up, went into, 2 are left. Kanu, so actually you find that they didn't have a majority. It is true that the constitution allows post-election memorandums, is it? That you guys can agree and do whatever. But to date, that has never happened. Jubilee right now has actually deposited something with the registrar of political parties so that they can exit as Azimio. Once they exit, it's okay. But you see now, for example, one person known as Sabina Chege, who initially had been appointed as a deputy chief whip of the minority, is in government but wants to whip. So you see, it is a fact that Kenya Kwanza didn't have majority, but they have since acquired, though dubious means, but they have since acquired. And we respect the fact that if somebody will willingly walk out of Azimio, we have no issue. The issue is why raid? And that's why this committee is important, so that now some of those issues may be addressed, because democracy is on trial.
Yes.
I think
my brother and I are still young and we are still in this space for long enough. Yeah. It would be very wrong if we shall be able to mutilate or rather kill the spirit of democracy. What happens in some 20 years from now when we have a dictator who can do the same? So for posterity and for the good of our country, especially young people, we need to defend what is right.
I beg to disagree with Mheshimiwa here completely. Because politics has its own tactics. There's something called political maneuvers and tactics. And even by the mere fact that the Political Parties Act 2011, which he knows very well, allows for pre- and post-election coalition agreements among political parties, then there is no absolute problem. In any case, these are honorable members of parliament who are making conscious decisions. Honorable members of parliament who have drawn mandate directly from the people. Is he trying to tell us that as an honorable member of parliament from Luanda, who has a mandate from the people, even though he ran on a party ticket, that he is not allowed to make conscious decisions? I thought in Parliament, people vote their conscience, you vote your constituency, and the party comes last. So I don't think that Honorable Yugi here will be able to say that he is incapacitated to canvass the issues of the people. For example, the cost of living. Parliament in itself, as much as it is comprised of the majority from Kenya Kwanza, Parliament is not supposed to be an appendage of the executive. If you look at the Constitution of Kenya, legislative authority is derived from the people and they're supposed to oversight the executive. This is the reason why the president has said clearly that members of the executive, the cabinet members, must appear before members of parliament to answer questions. He has only openly admitted that the Minister for Finance is being asked a question on the issue of employment of KRA staff. That means that the president himself is telling his members of the executive, beginning with the cabinet, that you must be a reliable watchdog of your own principles, that you must appear before parliamentary committees to answer questions directly from the representatives of the people.
And where is the adherence of the institutionalization of separation of powers when the executive appears in parliament? And also you say that the NADCO committee is a mere waste of time. But Mong'are, if you look at some tenets in this NADCO committee, there are issues that are being addressed there. For example, ethnic marginalization. The Sabots are bringing out their views to be added an extra county. We have views from the stakeholders in the business community, from traditional actors. Now, these other people, because we don't want to make it a Raila and Ruto affair. We want to make it a national affair that will steer and provide solutions to the next generations and the next coming years after elections and even during after elections. So how can you just totally say that it's a mere waste of time and basing your arguments on just a few aspects of things that should be discussed in parliament? What about the Mwananchi who goes there to bring out their views, the public participation?
Let me take you back a little bit. During the formation of the committee itself,
yes.
the composition of the committee.
I would need to assist him so that he doesn't lose his job. job after this. You know his boss is watching. So, because when he talks about a mere waste of time, when the president, who is his boss, has seen the wisdom in having this dialogue, then I'm lost. Because the president, in his wisdom, found it fit that this dialogue is there.
Yes.
Not for himself, not for Raila Amolo Odinga,
Not for Raila Amolo
but for
Odinga.
the Kenyan public.
And
But
you
we
also
know-
have to remember
we have
where we
historical
were. You have to remember where we were before this came as a solution
Correct.
to the crisis that we were in.
So I would wish to guide my brother here that, the likes of Mzee have been here long enough. He may not have been lucky to be president courtesy of some gymnastics here and there. But the fact remains that this guy has fought for this country and is a trailblazer in many fronts. That having been said, it is not a waste of time, my brother, because I've watched keenly how people have delivered their requests, how people have delivered their memorandum. And indeed, guys have got issues. For example, some of them are crazy, like the one of Cherargei, Senator for Nandi, that we now need to
Increase the term limit for the president.
by 7 years. So some of them are crazy, but some of the submissions being given are quite genuine and they add value. What you're looking for in this dialogue is a plus for our country,
Exactly.
not a minus. So anything that gives a plus, even if it comes from Kenya Kwanza, I'd support wholeheartedly, because my daughters, who are still young, would wish to live in a country that is peaceful. But anything that will deduct or smear or kind of taint the image of the country, then I'll
Yes.
like you to
Yeah, Esther, the point that I'm trying to understand what Mheshimiwa is saying with clarity. They have a premium platform called the Parliament of Kenya,
Sure.
where the Constitution says that Parliament is able to receive petitions from the public. Parliament can receive memorandums. Parliament and its committees,
Yes.
when they are canvassing issues. The other day, when they were forming the National Dialogue Committee, Parliament validated that committee through the floor of Parliament. And I was wondering that, is Parliament giving away its powers to a committee, or Parliament is delegating its authority to a committee when they already have drawn mandate directly from the people? For example, let's pick the issue of inclusivity. Parliament is competent enough to summon the relevant government agencies and ministers to address these questions directly as representatives of the people. You will see the questions that are there, for example, the composition of that committee itself. You rightly alluded to it. What led to the formation of this committee, and I think the president was playing tactics, is that there was a manufactured crisis. The word manufactured crisis in the form of forced mandamanos, paid up mandamanos, and we know the sponsors of the mandamanos at the time. So they manufactured a crisis in the country by forcing mandamanos and hooligans looting the country. Then they say that there is a crisis, which purely an artificial crisis, and then they say that this necessitates a dialogue. If I take you back in parallel, in 2007-2008, when we lost more than 1,300 people in a spontaneous post-election violence, the circumstances were fundamentally different from the circumstances that led to the formation of this committee. Because at the time, the international community had to intervene and send a panel of 7 eminent personalities. That was totally different, because truly Kenya was in a crisis. But Mheshimiwa here, they manufactured, and his rank and file manufactured a crisis, then they have set out the issues. Do you know the first person who will lose his job when the National Dialogue Committee tables their report in Parliament? It is Opiyo Wandayi. Because among the issues that are being debated is the creation of the office of the opposition leader. Right now, with our setup, our system is pure presidential system. And our presidential system says that the leader of minority in parliament is the leader of opposition. So when they institutionalize the office of the leader of opposition, we cannot have the leader of opposition and leader of minority at the same time. So the very first person who will lose his job is somebody from his rank and file, Opiyo Wandayi, because he'll have to pave way for a new office. So these are the issues that they have not looked at it. You talked about the shares. The deputy president was talking about shares. In a presidential system like ours, it is called first past the post.
Okay.
That the one who is first past the post is called the winner take it all.
Oh, yeah.
That is
Winner
our
take it all.
system.
That's
It's a winner
true.
take it all system. Unless we amend the system of government and use perhaps a parliamentary system or a proportional representation system or mixed,
Alright.
then we will not have a scenario of first past the post. And I know Mheshimiwa is a very brilliant person. The good Lord made him brilliant. I can see that. He knows what I'm saying.
Okay.
But on correction,
Yes.
it is true that Parliament has a unique role in the governance structure of this country. But it's also true, Parliament does not have monopoly of knowledge. That's why the president, in his wisdom, found it fit to have a presidential working party on education reforms. What didn't he tell Parliament to do? I sit in the Committee of Education. We could have done that. But in wisdom, he looked for eminent persons within society who sat and caucused and saw what's happening. Now that report is supposed to be tabled in Parliament for us now to adopt it as a session of paper and for it to be working, is it? The same case. So it is not that Parliament is Parliament is not, how do I say, it does not have monopoly of knowledge. Parliament requires expertise from outside. And that's why when you say this committee of eminent persons, it is true. We have religious people. Those guys are great. We may not have them in Parliament, but they have something to tell us. We have those guys who are in the teacher unions, the workers. So that's why we find that the committee sitting outside Parliament is important, and it had to go through Parliament for us to legalize it. So for it to sit, get feedback from people and bring it up. Having brought the report, it is Parliament again that now will want to sit and see how do they mainstream it now into a piece of legislation. So Parliament itself cannot work in exclusive.
In autonomy. All right.
I'm sure my good brother here will also present a petition, and maybe he has presented one to that committee, which will now add value to the negotiations. But those negotiations are not a waste of time. It is dangerous to live in ignorance.
Yes.
What I'm opposed totally to is trying to create legislation with one individual in mind. We must legislate, we must create, we must make laws, and he knows this very well, for posterity. Sure. What is happening at the National Dialogue Committee is trying to manufacture a particular direction of laws that will satisfy one individual who is known to creating artificial crisis.
It is not to satisfy one individual.
Name the person.
A total trajectory, and we know. And we know the person whose the law is being made.
If I can cut you short, Mong'are, the national dialogue is not only fixated to Kenya alone. There are countries that have used national dialogues as a solution to the crisis that they've had. For example, Tunisia, Sudan, they've used national dialogues. A national dialogue is actually a solution to get away from the streets and take it to formalized processes. So it can be in form of the referendums, commissions, and high-level committees like the ones we are having. So it's not a Raila Odinga issue. This is something that actually works.
Besides
for other systems of government also.
This is the same script that I've had when we were forming PDI.
Because how do we explain handling a leader who owes half of the country after an election or any other constitutional crisis in any country?
Raila Odinga, he said it rightly, that Raila Odinga has played is a fighter. He has made a very huge contribution to this country. In fact, I will use the word statesman to describe Raila Amolo Odinga. But I think in his political sunset days, there are people who are misadvising Raila to move from a statesman to somebody who is in the streets. Because just the other year, Raila was the High Representative of Africa on infrastructure projects. He is somebody who is supposed to play at the international fora. Somebody like William Ruto, who is a protege of Raila at some point, is now playing at the global stage, calling for reforms in the AU and the international world. But Raila Odinga is still in the streets. And this is somebody I refer to as a statesman. I think there are people who are misadvising Raila. There comes a time when you need to call it a day, start grooming and mentoring the next successor. When will Mheshimiwa Oyugi here become the next Raila Odinga?
He can start it.
So
he can also,
we have had talks. I was reading newspapers 2 days ago. We have had talks that there is a spare bullet called the sixth bullet, that Raila might possibly run for presidency in 2027.
Yes,
right.
I've seen it in the newspaper, and he said, I'm not going anywhere.
Yes, right.
So when will he groom? He has the fundamental right. But as a leader, you must know when to, when you're on the dance, you must know when to stop the orchestra.
All right.
So these are the things that we must look at in the context of what has happened in the past. You raised a very good question on the issue of the work report, which was handling fundamentally different things. The Career Commission report, which was handling the issues of the post-election violence in 2007. But all these are beautiful reports in the shelves of government. And there was a time, the principal Raila Odinga in the past, he has had very many good opportunities. He talked that we stole elections. But we know the government was supporting Raila Odinga in the last election, the entire state machinery. How can you steal an election, an underdog, stealing an election from somebody with the state machinery?
That's where we differ. You see, being in the streets does not taint one's image. Sitting on the streets or walking or carrying a spray on the head doesn't. When agitating for your right, you are never ashamed. In my mother tongue, we have something that we say that njaa inakupeleka penye mama yako aliuawa. So njaa is what is disturbing our Kenyans. Nelson Mandela is an icon in this world, and he was in prison for a number of years. That never tainted his image or who he was. Raila Odinga has been known to be in the streets. The reason why we are having county governments is because he went to the streets. The current regime never voted for this Katiba. Anyway, sometimes some of these things are biblical because Musa he led the children of Israel, but never saw the promised land. So these guys are benefiting out of the toil of none other than Raila Odinga. Mm-hmm. So when he can never, ever, he's a statesman, I believe, and going to the streets can never, ever demean or deny him that kind of that kind of a name. Mm-hmm. And therefore, for us to go on the streets, if that's the only voice that we could hear, the government could hear, even now as we stand, we're only waiting to be told that these things are bad. We'll go back to the streets and demand for what is ours. Wow. Because when we go to the streets, we speak for the common mwananchi.
But now the difference with going to the streets, my reading of the script going to the street is to destroy people's properties.
Not at all.
Because we have not seen the demonstrations being peaceful. Even though they claim that it is the police who are not being peaceful, like what you used to say in Comrade Power, that the police are rioting, comrades are just stopping the rioting police. This is not the case. Any peaceful demonstration that is guaranteed in the Constitution of Kenya is supposed to be very organized. We know. I saw one of the clips, their demonstrators are selling stones at 5 shillings each to demonstrators. So they are supposed to be peaceful, well organized, and even having torch bearers guiding the demonstrators that please use this route, yes. Not looting people's property to
demonstrations will be a story for another day because we're trying to stick to the topic. And ladies and gentlemen, talk to me and let me hear, is the National Dialogue Committee a Raila Odinga, let me not say Raila, a Raila Ruto issue? Or do you think it is a pathway to provide tangible solutions to the crisis we face in Kenya? And to read your comments, Byron Muthiani says, it is a Raila Odinga issue. The USA had an election which was closely contested, but Trump didn't have a national dialogue. We need to learn to accept election outcomes.
Wisdom will suffocate him.
I'd like to say, the National Dialogue Committee does not only have election audit result issues only. There are so many underlying issues. I talked about marginalization. Issues. There's marginalization. There is, what else is there? Cost of living. There is, I've seen different people increase of number of counties. You see? Entrenchment of CDF, NGAF, Senate oversight funds. Those are also discussed in the National Dialogue Committee.
Those are sweeteners. When somebody is trying to attract you, it's like when you want to slaughter a hen, you have to attract it with some maize. The entrenchment of CDF, these CDF funds, and I know Mheshimiwa is here, and with all due respect.
Who is the architect of that? Remember, the president did write a letter to the Speaker of the National Assembly way before. And that letter, one wanted to have executive appear in Parliament. In that letter, wanted to have CDF and GAF entrenched in the Constitution, and wanted to have what was the other? There were 3 things. Wanted to have the office of the official opposition
and the Senate oversight funds.
And Senate oversight. It was not Azimio idea. That's an idea that came from none other than HE number 1 of the Republic of Kenya. And therefore, our issues, we didn't want to talk about official opposition. We want to talk about the price of unga. We don't want to talk about the idea of Vangaf. We want to talk about inclusivity. But now we looked at their issues, and we got a working formula where we can discuss all these things. So my brother, some of the issues we're discussing actually originated from your camp. And with all due respect, we are treating those issues fairly, just as they should also expect to treat our issues. Cost of living, which to me is very important. When I go home, I hear that somebody somewhere tells me that now he or she can only buy a liter of kerosene, at 200 shillings. And you're like, really? Somebody can pay for a motorbike from one area to another one at 100 shillings, which was initially at 40 shillings or so because of the cost of living. So to me, the most important item that we need to discuss is the cost of living, which to me is very important. I'm sure my brother here is equally suffering as much as he is not a hustler. He seems to be doing well, but I'm sure as much as not a hustler, he's equally suffering because of the cost of living in this country.
I'm not doing so well, but I'm happy. Now, back to the question of the cost of living. I totally agree that there was a presidential memo written by the president in his sunrise days of the administration. This presidential memo was addressed to Parliament. It was addressed to the speakers of Parliament and parliamentarians. Now, the National Dialogue Committee has delegated the issues that were addressed, some of the issues that were addressed in the presidential memo to Parliament, a premium platform. I honestly hope that members of Parliament understand that they have a very huge premium platform where they can be able to shut down the government. Do you know if you don't pass the finance bill, and the Mheshimiwa is here, can confirm, if you don't pass the finance bill, the government is dysfunctional. Because government spends money with authorization of Parliament. If the finance bill is not passed, government cannot spend money. They can only spend up to 50%, but account later.
But
it is a premium platform.
The hand of this government is in Parliament, micromanaging everything that happens in Parliament through what we call tyranny of adopted kids.
There is a thin line between micromanaging and implementing the manifesto. When the president was campaigning, he was campaigning alongside the UDA platform. And he said that there must be we want to form a hustler government, and this is what we are promising the people. And it was a collective decision that people were voting the wheelbarrow from bottom to top, whichever way. The people said that we are giving mandate to the Kenya Kwanza administration to be able to lead. So when the MPs in UDA are trying to assist the president to implement the manifesto upon which they were elected, it is not micromanaging. I think it's a very, very thin line. But far beyond that, the question of the cost of living has been raised here. And it's good we address it, and I want to speak to 2 points to that. Number one, the president found a dilapidated economy. And we know some of the people caused this problem. The public debt was skyrocketing. The president has stopped excessive public borrowing, especially the expensive commercial loans. Right now, the government is focused on concessional loans with lower interest rates and longer repayment periods. Secondly, Esther, the president had to make a difficult decision between continuing to borrow, especially from external sources outside the country, or engage in an aggressive strategy of mobilizing revenues internally. And the president chose the latter. He said, let's mobilize resources from the country and stop borrowing from the public. And he even quoted the Bible.
How much
he
are we
said
borrowed?
A good person leaves inheritance to his people.
Now,
even
how much are we borrowed
is trying to leave inheritance for his daughters.
Now, the Controller of Budget report has revealed that the 22-23 budgetary allocation towards servicing public debt stood at 1.39 trillion.
Yes.
And the National Treasury has indicated that interest payment on loans are set to rise by a record of 231.6 billion shillings, which is going to weaken the Kenyan shilling.
Let me speak to that.
There's a narrative, before I speak, there's a narrative, and it's important they brought that issue up. There's a narrative out here which, that when the government took over, they found empty coffers. Let me say that the government does not have an account where they just accumulate money. Money comes in and flows out the same day. So on that day that they claim to have found 23 million, that same day that it was sworn in, more than 7 billion entered into that account.
That song has been oversung, and we continue to ask ourselves
And
the same questions.
Same day,
the public coffers.
The same day, money left to meet other obligations. So money, it's not like me. I can accumulate my money by saving and reach about 1 million or 10 million, is it? But the government is not the business of saving. It receives money and uses money. Every day, we collect a number of billions. Now, on that day that the president was sworn in, believe you me, billions trickled into our coffers. The same day, we made some obligations. So the issue of saying that we found this one, to me, that is
I think we should stop singing that song.
I think
And also,
you are being unfair to this question.
Kidogo, let me also bring this report. The Controller of Budget report last week, Mong'are, released a report quoting that in the last 9 months, the government spent a whopping 20.3 20.37 billion on travel, with domestic travel gobbling 14 billion and 6.3 billion in foreign travel. This pushed the recurrent expenditure to 542.5 billion, with development expenditure declining by 14.4%. Now, when you tell us about we found a dilapidated economy, there is no money, austerity measures, what are we talking about? You saw the Felix Koskei even had to come and tell the heads of departments that cut down on your spending. So when you talk about that dilapidated economy, we don't understand that.
Now, we must look, I'm not an economist and I cannot claim authority on economy, but at least I can make a few comments from an informed point of view, because I'm sitting from the inside, looking outside, and Mheshimiwa is sitting from outside, looking inside. So there is a gap in terms of information flow. The control of budget report that you've read there, the first comment was that the government has allocated 1.3 trillion towards the payment of debt. This is not debt that has been borrowed in this administration, because the administration has only served. We found the last 2 quarters of the financial years, and now we are in the first quarter. We are ending the first quarter of our first financial year. This is an important distinction to make, because the current financial year started in July 1st. This is the first financial year of this administration. So the priorities that we found were budgeted in the last financial year for the former regime. So the allocations that have been made are towards meeting the debt repayment obligations that he has rightly put out.
True, but how much has been borrowed?
These debts are not the ones that the Kenya Kwanza administration has borrowed. It is repaying. And that's why the president is mobilizing revenues to meet these obligations that he never in the first place signed off. Secondly, you've talked about the travels, the budget for 20 billion for domestic and foreign travels. But you're also not talking about the many, many big wins we are experiencing outside the country. The major investment deals, trade deals that the president and the delegations are signing. I think it is one sided of the story. In a single deal in the US last week, the president signed 8 billion for the construction of the the BRT bus, one deal. That deal is almost half of the travels for a year. So the travels are not prohibited. In fact, Parliament approved the budget for travels, because you don't expect, when the president is going outside the country and the delegations in the government to represent and brand the country, they should not be able to stay somewhere comfortable enough to represent the country. So let us not demonize the travels. Both domestic and even members of Parliament are always traveling. Parliament has a budget of 40 billion, and part of the budget is approved for travels. Both local, Mheshimiwa is always traveling, and Parliament has to facilitate him to go to the constituency to meet the electorates. So there is no harm when Mheshimiwa is facilitated by Parliament to meet the people, because he cannot use his own salary. We must put this in context, that we should ask the delegations, these travels that you're going out to the country, what is the return on the investment that we've put there?
Maybe a pause.
And the return is big. The president is doing a good job in the global arena.
Maybe a pause there. Just a pause. Travels are not bad, but they are bad when they are misused. None other than the deputy president in a podium said that these businesses keep on changing clothes
at the airports.
None other. He himself said, because he knows his children, in quotes, none other than the head of public service said that no more travels. Because there's total wastage happening in the country. It is true that we have economic challenges, but again, the little we have is being wasted.
Now, how can these loopholes be tightened?
Simple. Adherence to law.
So traveling, is this part of law?
You know, some of this, it is true we passed budget. Traveling is okay when you're traveling, but now, for example, without mentioning names, one of the CSs came to Parliament and was being asked, why do you even to travel with your girlfriend outside? It was all over the media, all over whatever. Meaning we have unnecessary travels taking place in the country. Having been said that, there's something you mentioned, borrowing. It's true we can't do without borrowing, but the current regime has borrowed in excess in 1 year. In this 1 year, he said that they came in the first, I think they were sworn in around the first quarter. I'm an accountant, a certified accountant for that matter. issues of figures are very close to me. These guys have borrowed in excess in 1 year. I wonder what will happen by the time we are done with 5 years.
I think it is a propaganda, is a statement Mheshimiwa is putting out, because he is not telling us how much we have borrowed and what is the source. You quoted the control of budget.
Yeah. In fact, I was just coming there. Had you brought this to mind, I would have really tabulated for you how much, and I want to challenge you that maybe bring me next time with him. I can bring those figures and table them so that authoritatively, this is how much you've borrowed since we took over. But now, there's too much wastage happening in this country, and that's where we need to look at. Number 2 is corruption. Just the other day, we discovered that sugar, illegal sugar, which the government had seized, put in a container somewhere, disappeared and went to the Kenyan market. Issue to do with Mbolea. Issue to do with Mbolea. It is said the Russian president was quoted somewhere in the media saying that they donated a lot of Mbolea to Kenya. But now these guys have sold that which was donated at 2,500, and they want us to clap for them for selling a donation. Really?
I think that is not true. I understand the issue of the Mbolea very well. Esther, let me put to our viewers also in context. Because I know Mheshimiwa here, he comes from a political party that is good at training their members on propaganda. They know how to indoctrinate their members with the propaganda. ODM party is a party of propaganda. They are very good.
For record purposes, I'm not ODM.
ODM and Azimio. I'm talking about general in Azimio. The rank and file of Azimio, ODM, they have a very good indoctrination policy. Now, let me put it very clearly. First of all, when the president came in, he was trying to realign most of the government organizations to be fit for purpose entities. For example, there was a very old organization that has never been given due attention. It's called the KNTC, and I know Mheshimiwa knows about it. Kenya National Trading Corporation.
Yes.
The Kenya National Trading Corporation is a state agency within the Ministry of Trade that has been lying idle. And Parliament is now facilitating that corporation to do trade, to import cooking oil on behalf of the government, to import fertilizer, to import these basic commodities that are so vital in stabilizing the economy. Let me put it in context. You have the private sector cartels who are producing cooking oil. They are a monopoly. They are producing fertilizer. They are producing semen. They are a monopoly. The president is having a conversation with them that, gentlemen, can we have a conversation on how to regulate the prices? It's an open conversation, a roundtable discussion with the president. But these people, because they are a monopoly, they don't want to heed the call of the president. What does the president do? He uses the Kenya National Trading Corporation to import affordable cooking oil, for example, the edible oil, the fertilizer, and sell it cheaply at 2,500 and make it available to every corner of this country. So the private sector competitor who is competing with KNTC will have to see this is the same quality. The farmer will buy from the KNTC at an affordable rate, the same quality. What will the ripple effect of that? It will force the private sector cartels to lower the prices. This is what we call stabilizing the economy. And I had to put this in context because the president is making very difficult decisions. The former regime, where Raila Amolo Odinga, his leader, was supporting subsidizing consumption. The former regime was subsidizing the maize millers. The president has made a difficult decision that you cannot continue to subsidize the consumption, the maize millers. Who are the cartels? And we don't even know where these monies went to. If you ask somebody, did you ever see the unga that was being subsidized? Nobody saw it. The president is saying, let us take advantage of the short rains, subsidize the production, subsidize the farmer to produce enough to feed the households. This is a brilliant decision, and the president has followed it through. Right now, the Ministry of Agriculture is collecting data about farmers across the country. They did collect the data. So the government has an accurate data in an information system about the farmers. So it is easy for the government, through the provincial administration, to give out fertilizer, farm seeds, for the farmers to be able to produce food for the country.
Well,
so this is a difficult decision. I know Mheshimiwa knows this, but he only being economical with the truth.
Well, I don't support the idea of subsidizing production vis-a-vis subsidizing consumption. It's a very novel idea. But the truth of the matter is that as much as we want to subsidize production, By the time this guy is ready to harvest that one, this guy will be dead. Because it's like now we are saying that we have a sick person and we don't want to do a first aid on this very person because you're waiting for some specialist person to come from overseas to come and treat this person. This guy will be dead, my friend. So we find that subsidizing production is the way to go for posterity. In the meanwhile, can we be able to ensure that the common mwananchi is able to afford? Because when this guy is starved to death, believe you me, you'll not be there to wait for that subsidized production, which will be coming a year after harvest.
The beauty is that we don't have people who have died, Esther. Where I come from, Esther, my people in North Mogirango, we have a Kisi saying that goes, enda ne sese. Yani inamaanisha tumbo ni kama umbwa, haishibi. Utakula lunch, ikifika saa 10 unasikia njaa. Utakula sapa, ikifika tu saa 4 usiku unasikia njaa. Meaning the stomach is like a dog, haishibi. The president is trying to tell the country we must have a vision beyond the stomach. What Mheshimiwa is trying to say in terms of consumption is that we must subsidize the stomach, which can never be filled. The stomach will always eat all the time.
You can't let this
so
guy
you
die.
must have a leader who must take the difficult decision, taking the people not where the people want, but where the people ought to be. And this is what I've seen in the president. He is taking the most difficult decisions. The other day, the opposition were opposing the housing levy. Right now, each day we are seeing many young people are being employed in the construction sites where the program for affordable housing is going on.
But we had kazi kwa
But
vijana.
the other one was kazi kwa vijana, where graduates are in the mitaros,
They are still there.
Slashing grass.
Somebody who is well educated, the parents have made an investment.
Are they not
but
there now?
With affordable housing,
We have these graduates actually excavating gravel.
Now let's
this.
put it in context. Construction has many factors around it.
Correct.
For example, the whole value chain of construction under the affordable housing program has many things that come with it. If the government is constructing houses in Luanda, for example, the government will not just build houses and leave them there. There will be other value-added services. For example, the government will construct houses, but the government will make sure there are roads to those houses. The government will make sure there are hospitals for the people in those houses. There is water to those houses. There is what we call other public utilities. There is electricity to those houses. So all this, the entire value chain for the affordable housing system that the president is doing has many components to it where different graduates are fitting in.
But you
This
remember,
the other administration was very lazy in thinking. And Mheshimiwa here, I don't, you are a good man and I can see you have a lot of brilliance in you. Don't take the country to the mitaros, the kazi kwa mitaani, especially the young people.
What we are saying...
Take them to wheelbarrows now.
Exactly. You know what we are saying? I looked at the two, each of these coalitions had a program they wanted to implement. It is true that Azmio also had the housing.
The affordable program.
Yeah. Which is good. One, to give affordable housing to the very many who don't have units. And number two was the creation of employment. But the issue that we had was how this was being implemented. For example, we don't have a framework. This money was supposed to be contributed, that you're supposed to contribute 1.5%, 3%, the other guy 3%. Now it's 1.5, is it?
1.5.
Now we needed to have legislation done by us to see how this is going to be done. Remember, in this country, we had NSSF. And NSSF was looted by none other than government through some dubious means. Those days of the last era of Nyayo and the beginning of the regime that took after Nyayo. So what we are saying is that we need to have proper guidelines to how this housing levy, or the housing program is going to take place. But you see right now, who are the contractors doing this? I'll be shocked to know if business people, government people are the very guys doing that. National Housing Corporation has been in this country for long. They have done commendable work. But you see now this thing has been taken off by that. National Housing is not doing that. It's being done by the Ministry of Housing and something. Well, National Housing would have been funded to continue doing the programs it was doing ever since. National Housing has done. I believe in Kisii we have houses done by National Housing Corporation.
There are a few houses.
There are a few houses. Yeah. So it was a good program because Azmio had the same manifesto. But now how it's being implemented is what our challenge was, because our duty is to safeguard pesa ya mwananchi. These guys were telling us, kazi ni kazi, pesa mfukoni. But now pesa mfukoni part has disappeared. We now are left with kazi.
But now I think Mheshimiwa is being economical with the truth. And this is how he's being economical with the truth.
How?
First of all, he's misrepresenting facts. and with all due respect, what the government is doing with the affordable housing agenda is what we call the rent-to-own scheme. That you mobilize resources, it's like insurance, from the fortunate few to support the vulnerable, the unfortunate many. These resources are being put into an affordable housing fund. And then a private contractor is being told, use your money, but you have the guarantee here from the affordable housing fund. He is the one who passed this legislation. He knows this. He's being just economical with the truth on this podium.
It was very clear.
Now, this money that is on the affordable housing fund, the private contractor are told, use your money, construct the houses, then there will be an off-take agreement after you complete the houses. So the tenants who will be lucky to get those houses, they will be told the rent you pay, convert it into mortgage. So you pay for 10, 15 years and the house becomes yours. But the guarantee to the private contractor is the affordable housing fund, which is collected every month by the government. He knows this. He was just trying being economical with the truth. And I know very well if the government today asks him that we want to do houses in Luanda, please give us land. I know Mheshimiwa will be the first person to use CDF money to buy land to give government to construct the houses. Because the government is the one giving land and providing the guarantee to the private investor. Then through an off-take agreement, the people are getting houses through a rent-to-own scheme. This is very clear. The Raila Amolo Odinga and the Azimio, they had the same manifesto. He has confessed to it. There is no other way to implement the program other than what the president is doing.
Right. Sure?
Give us the other way, because you need to give us the alternative policies here.
Ladies and gentlemen, keep joining this live discussion, send in your comments, send in your questions. Richard Mwenja says, such an in-depth, rigorous, and thorough debate, nuggets of wisdom from the panelists streaming in. Joseph Manganja says, it's a great debate, watching live. Mr. Korenji says, Nathaniel, still a great debater since high school debating days. So he's giving you the thumbs up. He also says, Joseph Manganja says, Nathaniel vied for MP North Mugirango constituency. How I wish they could elect him, as he's an eloquent and well-informed young leader. Billy Elias says, we are watching the great debate. Clara, happy to know that you are following. Karibu. Karibu, Mheshimiwa unaambiwa, thank you for coming to the show. They're watching from Luanda, tuned in from Luanda constituency. Say hi to my MP. As you continue, send in your questions, send in your comments. They're streaming in, and you took me all over the place.
That is the danger of combining.
It is the beauty of the debates, because we were talking about the National Dialogue Committee,
yes.
And then we went to the issues. Yeah. To the issues.
All these relate to National Dialogue.
All of them led to
all the issues. Yeah.
Exactly.
But let me ask this question. That in fact, the president cannot work well with an unstable environment, Mong'are. I think this is for you.
Yeah.
The president cannot work well. As much as you say that he is really working on the outside. There's a TIFA report last week that indicated that 53% of Kenyans are feeling that are seeing the president working, but we are not feeling the effects of his working. And as you have said, all of this has led to the NADCO. There are elements in this NADCO that require referendum. The same referendum that you squashed during the BBI. So is this NADCO not finally leading to the BBI process again?
I'm happy that there is a very good feedback that the people feel the president is very close to them. The proximity between the president and the people is still
he's
as
moving
good
around. He's going to sign deals in the USA.
Around the world, yes. And he's a great champion. You've seen him, he's calling for global reforms on the financial architecture. In fact, the president is calling for the abolishment of World Bank and IMF until they are restructured to fit for other African countries.
So what is the effect on the common man?
Now, there is a reason why the drafters of the Constitution, in their wisdom, they said that a government has 5 years to deliver. You don't expect the president to deliver on all his electoral promises within 1 year. In fact, not even 1 year. We are in the end of the first quarter. He's an accountant. He knows the end of the first quarter for the current administration. So we are just getting into the second quarter for the current administration. So barely we must give the president a chance, an opportunity to be able to put his priorities straight. So I think what the president is doing and the government is doing is that there is a social contract between the people for 5 years. Mheshimiwa Yogi has a contract with the people for 5 years. he can never deliver all his electoral promises within 1 year. I know he got his first CDF recently.
We are unpacking our promises by and by.
Piecemeal by piecemeal.
We are
because
unpacking.
you have 5 years.
Correct.
Yeah, you have 5 years to execute your promises to the people of Luanda. And it's fair enough that your opponent should give you an opportunity at the point of the 5th year is when they can start to criticize
But there's a Swahili
your
saying,
agenda.
There's a Swahili saying that says mchana mwema huonekana asubuhi. You know, mchana wa Kenya kwanza umeonekana kwa mwaka wa kwanza ambao umepita. Now we are seeing gloom. In that 1 year, things are difficult.
I don't expect the opposition to give praises to the president.
No, but it's true, things are difficult. It's
Things
not a
are
lie.
tough.
The price of super petrol is
things are tough.
211 shillings.
I wonder why my brother, maybe he just came into the country this morning.
The cost of electricity is high.
Things are tough.
Yes.
So mchana mwema huonekana asubuhi. Now, huu mchana wa serikali ya Ruto, of course, asubuhi yao was the first year in office. It is tough, my sister. And my brother must be very lucky that he's not feeling the pinch, but it's tough. Anytime I go to I had to put my phone off because I believe my guys will be calling with needs from the constituency. Because people are languishing in poverty. People are suffering. People cannot put food on the table. People cannot afford medical care. Very basic things, is it? And therefore, while I cannot oppose the government for the sake of opposing government, but I'll oppose government as long as it is injurious or painful to my people. And therefore, the first year of office, now that we are almost, by on Sunday we'll be starting the second quarter of this financial year, things are bad. And I fear for the current regime going by this trend. I fear for them because it may be tough for them. Because right now, I was looking at the CBK rates of the dollar today, they were abnormally high. And I'm like, whoosh, what happens in October? What happens in December? It will be bad. We are like to a situation where the dollar will be trading at 200 shillings.
That's true.
Tell me, what will happen? It will be terrible.
Now, let's put the discussion into context.
Something was tried that now we can buy our fuel not using the dollar and what have you, but
Yes.
it flopped around.
It flopped.
So you find that this national dialogue is an important framework that will help us untap some of these untapped potentials that can help us avoid a situation whereby after every election we have the similar problem. So it is not about a Ruto-Raila affair. It is about the common Wanjiko who is down there. The Mama Mboga who had been promised that nikiingia ndani, nikiweka Biblia chini, mambo yanakuwa tofauti. Right now, mambo si tofauti hasa ni matatu.
But Mheshimiwa, you see, the National Dialogue Committee itself is very expensive. There's a report revealed today that the Parliamentary Service Commission has to pay the members of that committee, from Kimani Ichung'wah being paid 50,000 shillings per sitting, the other members being paid 40,000, and exorbitant amounts of money.
It can't be 50,000 per sitting.
The report said 50,000 per sitting, but it was quashed by Senate Majority Leader Aaron Cheriot. He said they're not substantiated. But you see, where we read something, there must be sources that have revealed that.
Kenyans,
That's a good question.
people are coming up with that because of the pain they are going through. You know, if like now, if we can quote a figure of 70,000, I believe people will be out there saying now they are paid for 70,000. I'm sure that committee is a committee of eminent persons. His Excellency Kalonzo Musyoka is a great man in this country. Ichung'wah equally a great leader. And the two people co-chairing that committee, they are men of great wisdom, and they can't be able to navigate this this vessel. It is true, they may spend some resources, but the resources spent compared to the damage, compared to the exposure Kenyans will get, you can't compare. Because look at what was happening during Maandamanos. Look at what is happening right now in terms of the cost of living and inflation in this country. So we cannot equate 50 million or whatever that may be spent. I even don't think, I read somewhere today they're saying that they will be spending 106 million. It is a lie. It can't be there. I remember Ichung'wah, who is my leader in the house, had mentioned that they wanted to meet at a place where even it is free. We were ready to meet even under a tree, as long as you're able to put Mwananchi's desire on the table.
But now they're paying millions to bombers of Kenya.
I'm here to find out whom they are paying those millions, because to me, nothing was budgeted for the same. And you've just mentioned 50,000 shillings per sitting. It's a lie. It can't work. It can't work. We have thresholds. For example, when I sit in a committee in Parliament, the SRC has given credentials. This is how much this guy should be getting, is it? It can't be that one. It can never be that one.
You know, Esther, when I listen to Mheshimiwa speaking more, I'm realizing that the more reason why I object to this committee as a total waste of time. Look at the quality of people that the Azimio side nominated to sit in that committee.
Kalonzo Musyoka.
Kalonzo Musyoka with a few exceptions. With a few exceptions. You see the majority of the people out of their total representation in that committee are people who don't ooze confidence that Mheshimiwa. In fact, I thought they should have nominated somebody like him to sit in that committee.
My party leader,
because he oozes a lot of confidence.
Now, man of excellence.
Look at people like Jeremiah Kioni. They are the ones who are causing fist fight. People are fighting, instead of fighting intellectually, Jeremiah Kioni is fighting with his fists.
But he had
and these are the kind of people
in the
who
name
never,
of Hassan. He had an equal representation
now,
in the name of Hassan.
You see, when I'm giving out pregnant points, Mheshimiwa wants to make sure that I'm not giving pregnant points. Now, Esther, you see the people like Jeremiah Kioni. He has never voted for anybody in this country. In 2013, Jeremiah Kioni was the running mate of my boss, Musalia Mudavadi. In the polling station where he voted, Jeremiah Kioni Musalia got 0 votes in that polling station. In 2022, the polling station where Jeremiah Kioni voted, Raila Amolo Odinga got 0. And these are the kind of people who are being elected or nominated to sit in such committees. They don't ooze confidence that the committee deserves.
Can I correct
Kalonzo,
you? Jeremiah Kioni is not part of the team. He's a secretariat.
But we're talking about the total representation.
Let me just correct, because Jeremiah Kioni is not one of the 5.
Yes, the
Actually,
commissioners.
he's part of the secretariat.
The legal team, the legal team
was fighting with a commissioner in the name of Hassan. Now, who was who now?
Okay.
It is a total, because for me, I strongly hold the opinion that Parliament is competent enough to address the issues that are being canvassed. I don't see anything that Parliament cannot address. So
what would you rather have the other option? Because we've had Parliament and we saw what happened. It didn't help much. What is the other option? The other option is for the leaders to rise to the occasion and stop being selfish, because what is going on in that committee is trying to make a law with one individual in mind, so that this individual does not threaten us, because he already admitted that if Raila Amolo Odinga calls for street protests right now, that he has a sufuria packed in his car ready for the maandamano. So we can never make laws with one individual in mind in every election cycle. I agree, but we are doing this for the sake of Wanjiku. That's why people are discussing. Raila is a rich man, capable of taking care of himself, but he's doing all that because of him, myself, and our grandchildren and children who are coming after. It's not for him. I mean, he's done a lot enough. He's achieved so much. He's actually called him a statesman. So he's actually done more than enough. But what happened to my young girls tomorrow? What happens to your grandchildren tomorrow? That's what we are looking at. You know, US, over 200 years, Kenya is just a very small democracy. We cannot afford to tamper or to play around with the democracy of Kenya. That's why this committee to me is very important, and we must be able to listen to it. Now, and we are willing to pay whatever cost that this committee can help us transform and kind of have deeply entrenched pieces of legislation that will guide us going forward. We had the same stories that he's saying. It's a beautiful narration. We had the same beautiful narration from the BBI talks. What I'm expecting Parliament and Mheshimiwa Yugi to tell us is that as a Parliament, they should be able to pursue the things he's talking about, amendments. He is allowed, as a person, as a member of Parliament, to initiate amendments through parliamentary initiative. And this can be canvassed within a select committee of Parliament. For instance, if we decide that we want to amend certain sections of the Constitution for the sake of inclusivity of certain people in government, in Parliament or in government, then it is easy to pursue what we call the minimum reforms. We say the things that are allowed to be amended by Parliament, because the Constitution can only be amended by 2 ways: parliamentary initiative or by a popular initiative. The other time with the BBI, it was christened as the people initiative, but it failed. The courts, from High Court all the way to Supreme Court, it failed because it was amending the very basic structure of the Constitution. But if we agree that there are certain clauses that we need to amend for the sake of inclusivity of certain leaders, or to bring the right set of quality of leadership in terms of checks and balances in government, then we can pursue the way of minimum reforms. We say let Parliament amend certain
clauses, for example, in the executive, or amend certain clauses in the legislature to create the leader of opposition, but it can never be an amendment to overhaul the basic structure, the eternity clauses in the constitution. This one will flop in the same way the BBI flopped.
The BBI flopped.
Yeah.
Okay, Mong'are Wilson says the national dialogue, the ongoing one, is not of any importance to this nation. We just need to learn to respect the Constitution and the Election Act. NADCO is pushing for selfish interests. That is what Mong'are Wilson says.
You can see the voices of the people.
All right. Now, moving away from the NADCO, the government has paid 35.25 billion to 3 Gulf oil marketing companies that have been supplying fuel on credit for the past 6 months. But Mheshimiwa, we are seeing a hike that we have never seen before to fuel prices in Kenya. Just what is happening to the fuel prices in Kenya?
I'll be careful not to talk about global dynamics because that's where my good brother will want me to go to. But the fuel prices in Kenya are a summation of many variables. First, are the taxation measures this government put into effect recently. During campaigns, the current head of state, I remember at one time standing in a podium somewhere and saying that a good percentage of the tax of the cost of fuel is because of taxes. And therefore, nothing deliberate has been done to remove those taxes. If anything, we have enhanced and even added to them. And that's why we have what we're having. Number two, the chain through which fuel is processed, right from where it is, I'm sure my brother will want to bring in the issue of Russia, Ukraine, and what have you into this. It may be a factor, yes. But I find those are global factors, which I want to imagine will affect Uganda, will affect Tanzania, and any other country in the world. But Kenya, we have our own issues. And that is where we talk about the taxation matters, which have actually significantly increased the cost of fuel. Because what will make a Kenyan drive to Uganda, draw fuel there, then come back to Kenya? What will make a Kenyan cross over to Tanzania, draw fuel there, then come back to Kenya? Because it is cheaper there. Yet this fuel comes
through the port of Mombasa.
Transits through by road or whichever means to Uganda or wherever. There must be something wrong about us. But one thing that sickens me is the fact that somebody said that in 100 days is going to fix all this mess. We are now more than 100 days.
He even said it's going to review the taxes levied on fuel to reduce the price.
IPRA has been reduced into, I wonder what those guys are doing in office, because they are reduced to just, they sit somewhere, then on the 15th or thereabout, they'll come and give an announcement. I'm waiting to see. I'm afraid. But as it is, with what these guys are doing, I'm foreseeing a situation whereby, in fact, Korea said that by February we shall be doing it at 260. It's a promise, not a threat, and I'm sure it's coming to pass. Yes.
First of all, I will continue insisting that Mheshimiwa is being economical with the truth, or rather being selective with the facts that he's saying here. You must do comparative analysis within the wider context of the African continent, and even particularly close home, the East African community. If you look at the bands of taxes that Kenya and her neighbors, Uganda, Tanzania, we are levying, for instance, and is an accountant, he can attest to this, VAT in Tanzania is at 18%, while in Kenya we are at 16%. You will imagine the economic powerhouse of Tanzania, which is levying VAT at 18%, while Kenya is doing 16%, and we are the leader in East African community in terms of the economy. Then the question is, can we continue with this trend where we have a budget hole? Every financial year, our budget is 3 trillion, but we can only mobilize 2 trillion. The budget deficit is 1 trillion. The question is, where do we get to finance the budget deficit every financial year, if not to do some comparative analysis with our neighbors, how they are doing in terms of revenue mobilization. When Kibaki came to power in 2001, the economy grew up to a maximum of 7% in 2008. But also, the revenue collections from Kibaki's time grew up to 1.2 trillion when he was leaving power. This is the same case. If you look at many developed nations, and that's why I said a leader must take the people, not where the people want to be, but where they ought to be. Let me give you an example of countries in the Nordics. I've visited many countries. I've been to Norway, to Denmark, the entire Northern Europe, basically. If you go to Norway, the country is making decisive steps to invest in the future generation. They have something called the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, where the country has created a wealth fund for the country. They call it the Sovereign Wealth Fund. In this fund, the government is putting money there for the next generation. Right now, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund is the largest wealth fund in the world, with 1.3 trillion US dollars of assets in the world. In fact, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund owns 5% of Equity Bank here in Kenya. This means that the country, through their fund, they are investing in the next generation by mobilizing revenues. This is the same approach I'm seeing the president taking. Sometimes wakati daktari anakupeleka, when you are going to the doctor will give you inaitwa sindano. It will be painful in the beginning, but then you will get well and you recover quickly. This is the same process that we are going through, the healing process. We will feel a little pain, but it is the right decision. Instead of continuing to borrow, he's an accountant, he knows this. Instead of continuing to widen the budget deficit every financial year, the president is saying, let's cut down by 300 billion on the non-essential expenditures. The issues of newspapers, small things in the 300 billion. That's the first thing he did. He cut down expenditure by 300 billion.
That is true.
Now,
that is true.
These are the decisions that the president has to make.
Just a pause as you put that point in clear. You know, it is not a must that we have a budget of 3 trillion. Why couldn't we have a budget of 2-point-something trillion? It's not a must that we have a budget of 3 trillion.
I agree.
So the issue of budget, governance issues has been an issue in this country ever since. But now I don't understand why we must insist that our budget must be 3 trillion. We could still take it 2.7 or 2.5 and you'll still be able to, you only scratch yourself where your hand can reach, is it? Otherwise, unachukua miti unaongezea unakuanza kwenye ma.
Now, the only point...
Just to help you finish on that, we didn't have to get a budget of 3 trillion. So the issue of budget deficits, to me, it's amorphous. Because it hadn't to be there. We could still have a balanced budget and ensure that we are able to deliver. So that now those big promises we have, the challenge we have is we have excessive promises ya kutenga na kutenda. Those are the promises. Are you not doing for that? Believe you me, we can live within our means and we'll be good home and square.
Now, Mheshimiwa is also forgetting one thing, that there are things that when a president comes in or an administration comes in, they are mandatory for the president to meet those obligations. One of them is the cost of implementing the Constitution. We gave unto ourselves a very expensive Constitution. Look at the structures that the drafters of the Constitution created, and we voted unto ourselves that Constitution. For example, we have 47 electoral units that the president has to give money by Constitution and by law. Every month or every financial year, the national government has to appropriate resources to the electoral unit. So the very fact that the Constitution created those institutions, the 47 units in the counties, you have ministries, because we have the national government administration and the county governments. So if you look at the number of ministries, unless Mheshimiwa is saying that we should abolish some ministries, we should abolish many of they're called the SAGAs, semi-government agencies, that have been approved and established by Parliament. You will find when bills go to Parliament to establish certain institutions, those bills are supposed to be approved. Money is supposed to be approved by Parliament to give effect to to finance those institutions. So the first point where I will disagree with him, and to the extent I agree, we don't need to have a big budget because big budgets don't reflect big economy. We need to do a balanced budget, but you can never do a balanced budget when you have an expensive constitution to implement.
Mm-hmm. And you talked about Tanzania having 14% of VAT.
18%.
You said for 18%.
18%.
Yes, but do you know that Kenya has the highest taxing rate on its fuel, higher than USA in Illinois, higher than South Africa? And this is because it has VAT is one of the taxes imposed on fuel. There are also other taxes imposed on fuel, like the Petroleum Development Levy, the adulteration tax and other taxes. There are 9 taxes imposed on fuel that lead to the high cost of fuel in Kenya than in Tanzania. So if you want to do comparative analysis, you have to consider that also. There are so many taxes put on fuel from the point fuel reaches the port of Mombasa to the petrol station. So that is what is rising the cost of fuel in the country.
You'll expect on that one, so that you can combine, you'll expect that Tanzania will have a higher cost of fuel than Kenya, because it's true, VAT in Tanzania is 18%. It's true, VAT in Uganda is 18%. Ours has been 16%. But remember, back in 2014, thereabout, VAT for fuel or petroleum products was reduced in Kenya from 16 to 8%. And that was meant to give relief to our people, because the tax component in our fuel is too much vis-a-vis the tax component in Tanzania, vis-a-vis the tax component in Uganda, as much as their VAT is 18%. So there are things the government can do. I will not just fight the government for the sake of fighting, but there are things the government can do to ensure what we've just been talking about, to ensure that at least the cost of living to Mwananchi is,
sustainable.
I think the conversation of tax,
especially on fuel.
Because
we're wondering why the cost of fuel is on a hike.
Must be a give and take conversation. Because on this other side, the government has increased taxes on importation of certain things. Why? To encourage the investment in the local industry. For example, for every 1 kilo of sugar imported out of this country, imported into Kenya, the government has introduced a 5 shillings tax. Why did the government do that? Is to discourage importers of sugar and encourage investment in the local sugar industry. It comes from the sugar belt. It should be appreciating that the government is overtaxing the importers of sugar and encouraging the local investors. The other conversation of give and take on the food situation, it is a good point, and I agree with it, what Mheshimiwa is saying entirely. The government must be sensitive to the needs of the people, especially the disposable household incomes for the country. But look at the give and take in the conversation of tax. The government has reduced the prices and the taxes on fertilizer to encourage production of food. But at the same time, the VAT, which to a certain extent is an expensive affair for certain people, the government has increased the VAT. Not to say that it is a bad thing, because I know the ripple effect of increasing VAT on fuel, the fuel. But remember, we are also having a global conversation on the issue of green transition. The world is moving towards green transition. The world is abandoning the fossil fuel and is moving towards encouraging the electric buses. In Nairobi, you see, I have seen a lot of buses here called Basigo. Sometimes I ride one of the buses, the Basigo. These buses, they are electric. So the world will balance itself, because the whole world is moving towards green transition. And it will get to a point where you don't need to buy an electric fuel from the pump. Right now, IPRA, because he castigated IPRA, let me come in defense of IPRA. IPRA has released regulations on the EV charging points, that in every 20 kilometers, you must have a charging spot for electric vehicles. Every day, those regulations have been put in place. There are companies that are being encouraged to set up the infrastructure, and even fact Parliament has considered the climate bill. I think it must be on the final stages in Parliament to encourage investment in the green sector. So we are moving away from fossil fuel over time. We will not need the petrol station. We will have the electric charges on the highways.
That will take time.
Including electric bicycles or electric motorcycles. Many countries in the world, they are doing this. If you go to many cities, I know he's a well-traveled man, he knows what I'm talking about.
I met a Boda Boda the other day. I think those who are using the electric motorbikes as a sample. And this young man was complaining because he was saying that they charge, it takes like, you take 4 hours to charge. I've not been able to prove this, but this young man who is a Boda Boda, you take 4 hours to charge, meaning you'll be somewhere waiting for it to charge, is it? Upon charging...
But how many hours?
Upon charging, then the amount of hours you take...
Is how many?
Unakuta about 12 hours imeisha.
But now let's go to that point.
You see now, I was trying to discuss with this Boda Boda. Now you are expecting to have the electric, because I believe if we go green and have electrical motorbikes, it will be good. But I also want us to delve deeper. I may not have the facts right now. Delve deeper and see the cost-benefit analysis of such a facility. Because one, it will kind of remove from the system. We have some emissions and all these degenerative whatever that come from the fossil fuel. The electric would be good, but again, we wish to see that border person. You tell him sit somewhere for 4 hours. I'm really interested in that, and I believe after this I'll want to get more from him to see how they'll be working, so that my border.
Do you even have the capacity to sustain the EV?
Not yet now.
Now, there must be the beginning of many things. The Chinese have a wise saying that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step.
Correct.
He said, let me just use these facts. You charge the boda with 4 hours. You can charge this boda at night, 4 hours when you are sleeping. Then you ride 12 hours. Tell me which boda can ride a boda for 12 hours without stopping.
Why do you charge at night?
Because you will need some time to sleep. Because you need a minimum of about 8 hours to sleep.
Why do you charge at night?
You have to charge. These are the conversation now. You need to help the government to set up the right policies to implement these things. Because I know the government can never be perfect. That's why even TIFA rates it at 53%. If you look at the same comparison with Uhuru Kenyatta, it was at 27%. The president is trying. He's a hands-on leader. He has not forgotten the people. Like others who had converted state house into some other things that were consuming some substance. But the president is hands-on in terms of dealing with the people. So we must give the president time. At least maybe 2 financial years to be able to make an objective assessment of his performance or midterm. That's why in the US they have the midterms. In the midterms, there will be a vote of confidence on the government. Either they lose majority in the House or they gain majority in the House, because that is the time when you will have seen the half of the life of that administration.
And that's why I've said, mchana mwema uonekana asubuhi.
I think it is selectively crafted for...
Well, ladies and gentlemen, all we have is time. You have a parting shot, but before you parting shot, I will read some comments. Kavuli Masi says, tuned in from Wasin Gishu. Joshua Praise says, show is lit. Watching from Vihiga. Good to see my MP, Dickson Maungu. Franklin Temba says, tuned. Clara Mabinda says, watching from Butere. Who else? Ken Arek says, I can see my friend Nathaniel Mong'are. Say hi to him. Hi to you, Nathaniel Mong'are. So you can give us your parting shot as we finish up the show.
I want to say that the Latins have a wise saying that goes, manus manam lavat, that one hand must wash the other. I know the government has a role to play, and the opposition has a role to play in the transformation of this country. We must have the other hand washing the other hand. If you wash one hand on the sink with one hand, it will never be clean. But if this hand is washing the other hand, then the hands will be clean. We must remember that the common denominator for this country is Kenya. Either you are in the opposition or in the government. And I like the approach of Mheshimiwa Dickson here, is that the opposition must wash the hand of the government, and the government must wash the hand of the opposition, so that this country moves forward.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting us here. I wish to say that going forward, what I look forward to is a country that is peaceful. A system that is able to coexist, both those who are in government and those who are out of government, because all of us are in government in whichever way. And all I want to say is that, once it was Saitoti who said that sometimes the need of the country are more important than the needs of an individual. So I only want to call upon our leaders that a time has come, we need to focus on the need and the goodness of our country and not individual or selfish interests. Otherwise, the show has been great. I appreciate my good brother here. I will wish to debate him again because he's quite wise.
Please invite us again.
We shall invite you again, and thank you for honoring the show today. Thank you
so much.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for your contribution. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your comments. Keep on keeping tabs with this show. If you missed the live show, you can watch the recording at Esther Nyonje on YouTube. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on it. Let's grow together. And as you have said, the Italian saying is,
Manus manam lavat. One hand washes the other.
That's it. Until next time, see you.